"You curtsy like a governess," the Duke of Stranmere said, "but you stand like a woman who has never in her life been told where to stand. Which is the truth, I wonder, and which is the disguise?" The new governess, who had been at Stranmere precisely 1 hour, went very still in the doorway of his study. She had spent a fortnight perfecting the part, the plain grey gown, the lowered eyes, the soft deferential voice, the name that was not quite her own, and she had walked in this house certain that no one would look twice at so unremarkable a creature as a governess come to teach a duke's young wards their letters and their music. She had not reckoned on the duke himself. She had not reckoned on a man who, in the space of a single curtsy, had looked at her once and seen straight through to the lady beneath. "I am sure I do not understand your grace," she said, keeping her eyes down, keeping her voice soft. Her name, she had told the housekeeper, was Miss Vance, a clergyman's daughter, lately of a respectable family fallen on hard times. Half of it was even true. Her name was indeed Vance. The clergyman's daughter was an invention. Petronella Vance was the only child of a baron, and she had run from her father's house 3 weeks since rather than be married, at his command, to a man twice her age whom she had met exactly once and disliked with her whole heart. "I think you understand me very well," the Duke said. He was seated behind a great desk, and he did not rise, and he did not raise his voice, but his dark eyes rested on her with an attention that made the lie feel suddenly thin as paper. A governess come to a strange house keeps her hands folded and her gaze upon the floor, and waits to be addressed. You did all of that. And yet you walked the length of my hall just now as though you owned it, and you looked at the portrait of my grandmother as though you were appraising the painter, and when my housekeeper offered you the small back room, you accepted it with a graciousness that would have done credit to a duchess declining a throne. Governesses are not gracious, Miss Vance. They are grateful. There is a difference, and you do not yet know it, because you have never had cause to learn it. Petronella's heart was beating hard, but she had not been raised to fold under pressure, even pressure as quiet and exact as this. She lifted her eyes at last and met his. "And if your grace is mistaken? Then I shall apologize handsomely, and you shall teach my wards their scales, and we shall both forget I ever spoke." He leaned back. "But I am not mistaken. I have spent my life among people who are pretending to be something they are not. It is the chief occupation of my world, and I have grown unusually good at telling the true coin from the false. You are a lady, Miss Vance, gently born and finely raised, and you have put on this grey gown the way a soldier puts on a disguise to cross enemy ground. The only question that interests me is what you are running from, and whether it is something I ought to protect you from, or hand you back to." The word protect undid her composure more than all the rest. She had not expected it. She had braced for suspicion, for dismissal, for the cold turning out of an impostor. She had not braced for a man who, having seen through her in an hour, would speak in the same breath of shielding her. Her careful soft voice deserted her, and what came out instead was simply true. "If you hand me back," she said, "you will hand me to a marriage I would sooner die than make. I am not a thief, your grace, nor a spy, nor anything that would harm this house. I am only a woman who was to be sold to settle a debt, and who chose, instead of the altar, the back room and the grey gown and the scales. I will teach your wards faithfully and well. I ask only that you do not send word of where I am to anyone who comes asking. That is the whole of my crime." The Duke of Stranmere was silent a long moment. Something had changed in his face. The cool appraisal had gone out of it, and what replaced it was graver and warmer and harder to name. He had unmasked her expecting, perhaps, an adventuress or a fortune hunter, or one of the many sorts of false coin his world minted by the dozen. He had not expected courage. He had not expected a gently born girl who had walked away from rank and safety, and her own name rather than be bartered, and who stood now in his study in a borrowed grey gown, owning all of it, asking not for rescue, but only for silence. "Sit down, Miss Vance," he said, and his voice had gentled. "You need not stand like a governess. There is no one here to perform for. Sit and tell me the name of the man you are running from, so that I may know him if he comes to my door." She sat. She told him, and from that hour, though neither of them named it, the disguise became a thing they shared, a secret kept between them, which is a dangerous and binding sort of thing for two people to hold together. She was, as it happened, an excellent governess. The Duke's two young wards, his late brother's children, left to his guardianship, had been through a procession of door instructresses and had defeated every one. They did not defeat Petronella. She taught them as a lady teaches, with grace and patience and a quick wit that turned lessons into games, and within a fortnight the silent house had children's laughter in it again, and the Duke of Stranmere, passing the schoolroom door, would slow his step to listen, and find himself reluctant to walk on. He told himself it was the children he listened for. He was not, on the whole, a man who lied easily to himself, and the lie did not last. The children adored her, which made the lie harder still. The little girl, who had not spoken above a whisper to any governess before, brought Petronella a crown of clover one afternoon and announced that she was now the queen of the schoolroom, and Petronella accepted the office as though it were a coronation, and they all three laughed, and the Duke, passing the door, could not make himself walk on. He had watched his late brother's children go grey and silent under their grief, and had not known how to reach them. This woman, in a borrowed grey gown and a borrowed name, had reached them in a fortnight, simply by being kind. "You are good with them," he told her that evening, almost accusingly, as though her goodness were a further piece of evidence in the case. He was building against her disguise. "Governesses are competent. They are rarely loved. The child made you a crone today." "The child," Petronella said, "has had a hard year and a procession of stern women, and wished only for one who would laugh. It is not a great mystery." But she coloured a little, pleased despite herself, and he saw it, and it undid him further. For he was watching her. He could not help it. He watched the lady show through the governess at 100 small moments, in the way she corrected the children's manners, as one who had been finely raised, in the way she could discuss a book or a piece of music with an ease that no clergyman's daughter fallen on hard times had any business possessing. And he watched, too, the thing the grey gown could not disguise, her kindness, her steadiness, the warmth she gave his brother's grieving children without stint. He had been a guardian alone for a year, grave and overburdened, and he had not known how heavy the house had grown until she came and made it light. There was a moment in the 3rd week that decided him. A letter had come to the house, addressed in an unfamiliar hand, inquiring after a young gentlewoman thought to have fled toward this county. The Duke recognized at once what it was, a net cast wide by the man Petronella had run from. And very deliberately, he held a corner of it to the candle and watched it burn to ash in the cold grate. He had told her he would protect her. He found that he meant it past all reason, and that he had stopped, somewhere in those 3 weeks, regarding her as a stranger at all. "You watch me," she said to him one evening. The children were abed. She had come to return a book to the library and found him there, and the candles were burning low. "You have watched me since the first hour. I am never quite certain whether you are guarding me or guarding against me." "Guarding you," he said. "I settled the question some while ago." He set down his own book. "Miss Vance, Petronella, I find myself in an awkward position. I have a governess in my house whom I esteem more than I have esteemed any woman in years, and who is not, in fact, a governess at all, but a lady of birth equal to my own, hiding under my roof from a fate she did not deserve. The propriety of the thing is a tangle no drawing-room rule was ever made to address, and I find that I no longer care to address it by the rules." Her breath had gone shallow. "What do you mean to do?" "I mean to ask you something, and I mean to ask it as a man asks a lady, and not as a duke addresses a governess, because the second was never true, and we have both always known it. He came around the desk and stood before her in the low gold light. "The man your father would have sold you to, I have made it my business to learn of him. He has no claim on you that a stronger one cannot overmaster. I can stand between you and him. I can make it so that no debt and no command can reach you. But I will not do it as your employer, holding the favor over you. I will do it only if I may do it as your husband, asking nothing you do not freely give." He paused. "I saw the lady beneath the grey gown in the first hour you stood in my study. I have spent every hour since falling in love with the woman beneath the lady. Stay at Stranmere, Petronella, not as a governess in hiding, as its mistress and mine and safe." The plain grey gown, the lowered eyes, the soft false voice, all the careful armour of 3 weeks fell away from her at once, and what stood before him was simply Petronella Vance, Baron's daughter, who had gambled everything on a disguise and found, behind it, not the cold turning out she had feared, but a man who had seen her true the moment she walked through his door, and had chosen her for the truth. "You unmasked me in an hour," she said, "and there was wonder in it, and the beginning of joyful tears. I thought it the worst luck in the world. I have come to think it the best. I tried so hard to be no one, and you would not let me. You saw the lady, and then you saw past her to me, and I did not know, until this moment, how badly I wished to be seen." "Then be seen," he said, "and be mine, and let your father come to my door if he dares, and find a duke between him and his daughter, and a wedding ring he cannot argue with." He took her hand, and she let him, and the false name fell away forever. In the days that followed, before the Baron came, Petronella shed the disguise by slow degrees. The plain grey gowns gave way to finer stuff the Duke quietly had made for her, the lowered eyes lifted, and the quick, clear voice she had hidden so long came back into the house. She had gambled everything on a borrowed name, and found at the end of it not the cold turning out she had feared, but a home. The Baron did come, in the end, bristling and indignant, talking of debts and arrangements and the marriage he had promised. He found the Duke of Stranmere unmoved as a stone, and his daughter no longer a runaway governess, but a duke's affianced bride, beyond his reach and beyond his selling. There was nothing he could do, and after some bluster he discovered that the match his daughter had made was so far above the one he had schemed at that even his pride could not long complain of it. He went home a great deal quieter than he had come. They were married before the autumn, in the chapel at Stranmere, and the 2 young wards strewed the path with the last roses of the year, for the governess they had come to love had become their aunt, and was not going away, ever. And the Duke of Stranmere, who had spent his life telling the true coin from the false in a world full of pretending, knew that he had found, in a grey gown and a borrowed name, the one wholly true thing, and he kept her, and cherished her all the rest of his days. On quiet evenings she would tease him about it, the speed of his unmasking, how he had not let her be a governess for a single full hour. And he would only smile and take her hand and say that some things a man knows the moment he sees them, and that the best thing he had ever done in his life was to look once at a girl in grey and trouble himself to see who she truly was. And she would lay her head against his shoulder, content past all her old fear, knowing that she had been seen, and known and chosen, and that of all the homes she might have run to she had run, without knowing it, straight to the one where she was always meant to stay.